What began as Michael Reynolds' spontaneous choice to rescue a wounded bald eagle from his cornfield would uncover a secret that two federal agencies had spent millions to conceal from public awareness. The dramatic summer drought that had brought the majestic bird to seek water on his property now provided the perfect backdrop for a covert FBI operation unlike anything the peaceful farming community of Riverdale County had ever experienced. Before we dive deeper into this extraordinary tale, tell us where you're watching from, and if this story resonates with you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow's video will reveal an even more astonishing continuation that you won't want to miss. Michael stood on his farmhouse porch, coffee growing cold in his calloused hands as he counted the 8th unmarked black SUV rolling through his gates. The modest 180-acre farm that his grandfather had cultivated from the challenging Nebraska soil now resembled a secured federal site rather than the family-owned organic operation it had been just 24 hours earlier. "None of this makes any sense, Sadie," he murmured to the border collie mix, pressing anxiously against his leg. The dog whimpered softly, mirroring her owner's growing concern as agents in dark suits established a perimeter around the old equipment shed where yesterday's unexpected visitor now rested under what appeared to be sophisticated monitoring equipment. The record-breaking heat wave that meteorologists had named the Heartland Scorcher had brought temperatures soaring past 105 degrees for 14 consecutive days, devastating crops across 3 states and forcing farmers to implement emergency water conservation measures. Local authorities had issued drought warnings, restricted irrigation usage, and advised residents to report wildlife struggling with the extreme conditions. Michael had spent the morning checking his irrigation systems and reinforcing shade structures for his livestock, preparing his small operation for another week of punishing heat. It was during his midday inspection of the eastern cornfield, where his experimental drought-resistant corn was showing promising results, that he'd spotted the fallen raptor. At first, Michael thought it was merely debris carried by the relentless hot winds that had been scouring the plains, perhaps a piece of plastic sheeting torn from a neighbor's greenhouse. Only when Sadie began barking insistently and circling the object did Michael realize it was America's national bird. A magnificent bald eagle collapsed on the dusty soil, one wing splayed at an unnatural angle. Getting the injured eagle to safety had been a delicate challenge. Despite its weakened state, the bird was still a powerful predator with a dangerous beak and talons. Michael had rushed back to the house, retrieving the thick welding gloves from his workshop and a soft blanket from the linen closet. With extreme caution, he'd managed to gently wrap the eagle, noting with concern its labored breathing and unusual markings that didn't match the typical bald eagle patterns he was familiar with from his years as an amateur wildlife photographer. The bird had remained unnervingly still during transport, its piercing eyes tracking Michael's movements with an intelligence that seemed almost unnatural. He'd settled it in the equipment shed, where the concrete floor and metal walls maintained a cooler temperature even during the worst of the heat wave. A quick call to the State Wildlife Rehabilitation Center had yielded an unexpected response. Rather than the standard protocol of sending a rehabilitation specialist, the receptionist had asked a series of increasingly specific questions about the eagle's markings and behavior before promising that appropriate authorities would be dispatched immediately. It wasn't the severity of the eagle's injuries that had triggered this federal response. It was something about the bird itself, something Michael had initially overlooked, but now seemed ominously significant given the government's reaction. As Michael had tended to the eagle, providing water and creating a makeshift shelter within the shed, he'd discovered several anomalies that had initially confused him. Michael's fingers unconsciously traced the unusual marking he'd found on the eagle's leg, a small metallic band, unlike the standard tracking tags used by wildlife services. The band contained a microchip and bore an intricate alphanumeric sequence alongside a symbol that resembled a stylized keyhole or lock. The same symbol that had caused the first government agent to freeze momentarily when Michael mentioned it during his pre-dawn phone call to the wildlife center. The eagle's possessions, if one could call them that, had been minimal. The metal band, a nearly microscopic device attached to its feathers that Michael had initially mistaken for a burr or seed pod, and a peculiar iridescent feather pattern that seemed to shift colors depending on the angle of light. Most strikingly, embedded within the eagle's damaged wing, was a minuscule object that had immediately struck Michael as unusual. No larger than a grain of rice, but with a faint electronic pulse that he could feel through his gloves. Its surface, etched with markings similar to those on the leg band. During those tense hours working to stabilize the injured bird, Michael had noticed other peculiarities. The eagle's body temperature had remained perfectly stable despite the oppressive heat and the trauma of its injury. Its eyes occasionally reflected light with an odd copper-green luminescence rather than the expected reflection, and when Michael had checked the damaged wing using his phone's flashlight, he could have sworn the broken bone had visibly shifted toward realignment without any intervention. Now, his simple act of wildlife rescue had escalated into something far beyond Michael's understanding. The federal response included vehicles bearing government plates, but no agency identification, and the personnel establishing positions around his property carried themselves with the unmistakable bearing of law enforcement, despite their unmarked tactical gear. Several were unloading equipment that looked more appropriate for a high-security laboratory than a wildlife recovery operation. Portable scanning devices, communication systems with directional antennas, and what appeared to be specialized containment units with environmental controls. The sound of helicopter rotors grew louder overhead, adding to the surreal transformation of his isolated family farm. A sleek black helicopter bearing minimal identification settled onto his south pasture, the downdraft creating swirling dust devils in the parched soil. From the aircraft emerged a woman in professional attire, her bearing clearly authoritative. Despite the absence of any visible badge or identification, she strode purposefully toward the house, flanked by two agents whose alert eyes continuously scanned the surroundings, their hands positioned for quick access to concealed weapons. As she approached the porch, Michael stepped forward, determined to get answers about why his act of basic wildlife conservation had apparently triggered a national security response. Sadie remained at his side, her normally friendly demeanor replaced with cautious vigilance. "Mr. Reynolds," the woman called as she reached the steps. "I'm Special Agent Diana Harper, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Specialized Wildlife Trafficking Division. Thank you for remaining on your property. It simplifies our containment protocols." Michael nodded cautiously, noting how her escorts positioned themselves to maintain clear sightlines across his farm. "Didn't realize I had a choice, Agent Harper. Your people have effectively surrounded my home." "A necessary precaution, I assure you," she replied with practiced neutrality. "The situation requires certain security measures that may seem excessive, but are entirely warranted given the circumstances." "And what situation would that be?" Michael asked, his patience wearing thin. "I found an injured eagle on my property and brought it to safety. Since when does helping wildlife warrant an FBI occupation?" Something flickered across Agent Harper's face, a momentary break in her professional mask that might have been respect or perhaps concern. "Mr. Reynolds, the bird you recovered is not what you think it is. For your safety and national security, I need you to brief me on everything that occurred from the moment you found it until our arrival." "Not what I think," Michael repeated, confusion mounting. It's an injured bald eagle, America's national bird, protected under federal law. I know they're threatened, but this response seems extreme, even for an endangered species violation." Agent Harper studied him carefully. "Did the eagle communicate with you at any point? Share any information or display unusual behaviors beyond what would be expected from an injured wild bird?" Michael hesitated, recalling the strange moments when the eagle had seemed to study him with an almost human intelligence, how it had remained unnaturally calm during his examination of its injuries, and how it had appeared to deliberately position its damaged wing for his inspection. "It was unusually docile," he admitted. "Didn't struggle much when I wrapped it in the blanket, and there was one strange moment. It seemed to deliberately extend its injured wing toward me, almost like it was showing me where it was hurt. I figured it was just responding to pain when I touched different areas." He paused, remembering another detail. "There was one other thing. When I was preparing a water dish, it made a sound. Not a normal eagle cry, but almost like a pattern. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short sounds. I know enough Morse code from my grandfather to recognize SOS when I hear it, but I figured that was just my imagination running wild after too many hours in the sun." The agent's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. "And the object you mentioned to Wildlife Services, the metallic band on its leg, did you attempt to remove it or manipulate it in any way? Did it display any unusual properties?" A chill that had nothing to do with the summer heat crept up Michael's spine. "I didn't try to remove it, didn't want to stress the bird further, but it was warm to the touch, warmer than the eagle's. Body temperature should have allowed, and when I examined it closely, the symbols on it seemed to shift slightly, rearranging themselves when I wasn't looking directly at them." He hesitated again. "Also, my cell phone lost all signal when I was photographing the band, even though I had full bars moments before. The signal returned when I moved away." Instead of answering directly, Agent Harper handed him an official document, a temporary non-disclosure agreement with serious penalties prominently displayed in the opening paragraph. "Before we proceed further, I need your signature acknowledging that everything from this point forward is classified at the highest level of national security." Michael stared at the document, the surreal quality of the day intensifying. The simple act of helping an injured bird had somehow entangled him in something far beyond his understanding, something significant enough to bring federal assets streaming to his isolated property within hours of his call to the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. As the hot wind stirred the struggling corn in his fields, Michael made a decision that would forever alter his understanding of the world and his place in it. He took the offered pen and signed, committing himself to whatever extraordinary revelation waited on the other side of his signature. "Now," he said, handing back the signed document, "tell me what I really rescued from my cornfield." Agent Harper gestured toward the farmhouse door. "We should continue this conversation inside, Mr. Reynolds. Some matters are better discussed away from open spaces and potential listening devices." Michael raised an eyebrow. "Listening devices on my farm? The nearest neighbor is 3 miles down the road." "Distance is no longer the barrier to surveillance it once was," she replied cryptically, her eyes scanning the tree line beyond his property. "And given what I'm about to share with you, privacy is essential." Inside the farmhouse kitchen, Michael's home felt suddenly unfamiliar with the agent's presence. The worn wooden table where 3 generations of Reynolds had taken their meals now served as an impromptu security briefing station. As Harper removed a slim tablet from her jacket, the shadows in the room seemed to deepen. "What I'm authorized to tell you is limited," she began, activating the device with her thumbprint. "But given your direct contact with the subject and the tracking device, you're entitled to certain information for your own safety." The tablet projected a three-dimensional holographic display above the kitchen table, technology far beyond anything Michael had seen outside of science fiction films. The image showed a topographical map of the Midwest with a series of overlapping flight paths highlighted in pulsing red. 48 hours ago, our monitoring stations detected an unauthorized aerial incursion in this region. She manipulated the display, zooming in on an area approximately 30 miles east of Michael's property. The signature matched patterns we've been tracking for nearly 2 decades, patterns associated with what we classify as advanced avian surveillance systems. Michael stared at the pulsing visualization, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. I don't understand what that means. In the simplest terms, Mr. Reynolds, it means the eagle you rescued is carrying classified technology. The bird itself is real, a genuine bald eagle, but it has been enhanced with certain capabilities that make it an asset of considerable national security importance. She paused, studying his reaction carefully. The object embedded in its wing is a next-generation surveillance device with capabilities that would be considered impossible by conventional technological standards. Your discovery of it in a compromised state represents a serious security breach. Michael felt a cold sensation spreading through his chest. Are you saying someone weaponized an eagle, turned a protected species into some kind of spy drone? That terminology is imprecise and unhelpful, Agent Harper replied, her tone remaining measured. Our working hypothesis, based on signal analysis and previous incidents, suggests something more complex. She manipulated the holographic display, again, revealing a timeline of similar signal patterns detected across North America since 2003. We've documented 23 such incidents in 7 states. In most cases, we recovered only the devices themselves, detached from their carriers. Your eagle is the first living specimen we've encountered with the complete integrated system still functional. The clinical terminology sent a wave of unease through Michael. You keep avoiding my question. Who did this? Foreign intelligence, military, private contractors? Harper met his gaze directly. That's where this becomes complicated. The technology embedded in this eagle exceeds current capabilities of any known intelligence service or military program. Its components utilize principles that our best scientists are still struggling to reverse engineer from previous recovered fragments. She hesitated, seeming to weigh her next words carefully. The materials analysis of previously recovered devices indicates manufacturing techniques and alloys that do not match any known terrestrial production method. Michael sat back in his chair, the implication of her words sinking in. Are you suggesting... What exactly are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything beyond the factual evidence, Harper replied evenly. The technology is of unknown origin. Our job is to secure it, study it, and prevent it from falling into unauthorized hands while protecting the civilian population from potential consequences of exposure. She adjusted the display again, showing a close-up of what appeared to be the metallic band Michael had observed on the eagle's leg. This is not merely an identification tag. It's a sophisticated control system that interfaces directly with the eagle's nervous system, allowing for remote guidance while maintaining the bird's natural flight patterns and behaviors. The embedded wing device contains a multi-spectrum surveillance package with capabilities that include thermal imaging, electromagnetic field detection, and a form of data transmission that operates on principles we're still working to understand. Michael's eyes narrowed as he processed this information. So the eagle is being controlled remotely? It's not acting on its own? The relationship is more complex than simple remote control, Harper explained. The system works in partnership, with the eagle's natural instincts and abilities enhancing rather than overriding them. From previous recovered fragments, we believe the control system includes a form of artificial intelligence that adapts to the eagle's behavior patterns, creating a symbiotic rather than merely parasitic relationship. Michael's mind flashed to the unusual intelligence he'd observed in the eagle's eyes, the deliberate way it had positioned its wing, the patterned sounds it had made. The wing injury. Was that real or some kind of malfunction in this technology? Both, Harper replied. Our preliminary assessment indicates the eagle encountered a strong electromagnetic pulse that damaged the control system, causing it to lose altitude, and sustained a genuine biological injury during the resulting crash. The system appears to have initiated some form of emergency protocol, directing the eagle to seek human assistance rather than risk complete failure in an isolated location. She met his gaze directly. In essence, Mr. Reynolds, the eagle chose you, or more precisely, the system guiding it identified your property as an optimal location for emergency intervention based on criteria we're still working to determine. The implications of what Agent Harper was sharing began to sink in. Michael wasn't just hosting an injured wild bird. He had somehow become entangled with classified technology beyond human understanding and a covert government operation that had apparently been ongoing for decades. "Why tell me any of this?" Michael asked finally. "Couldn't you have created some cover story, taken the eagle away, and left me none the wiser?" Agent Harper deactivated the tablet, the holographic display vanishing as suddenly as it had appeared. "Two reasons, Mr. Reynolds. First, your exposure to both the eagle and the embedded devices may have physiological implications we need to monitor. The technology generates field effects that can potentially alter cellular structures in proximity." She leaned forward slightly, her professional detachment momentarily giving way to genuine concern. "Second, and more immediately relevant, the eagle you rescued isn't operating in isolation. Our systems detected multiple similar signatures during the same time frame, converging on this general region with apparent coordinated purpose." Michael felt the weight of her words settling over him. "You're saying there are more of them out there, and they're looking for this one?" "Almost certainly. The question is whether their intent is recovery or elimination. Previous evidence suggests these systems are deployed in coordinated networks. When one is compromised, others may be programmed to either retrieve it or ensure it doesn't fall into unauthorized hands, which could include us." The sound of approaching footsteps on the porch interrupted their conversation. One of the agent's security team entered after a brief knock, his expression urgent beneath his professional composure. "Ma'am, we've detected approaching aerial signatures from the northwest. Multiple subjects moving in formation, converging on our location. Estimated time to perimeter, 15 minutes. Agent Harper stood immediately, her body language shifting from informational to operational. "Activate containment protocols. I want air support providing real-time tracking and perimeter teams on high alert. No engagement without explicit authorization." She turned to Michael, her expression grave. "Mr. Reynolds, it appears your farm is about to become the focal point for a convergence of highly sensitive technology of unknown origin. I strongly recommend you allow us to evacuate you to a secure location immediately." Michael rose from his chair, looking out the window toward the equipment shed where the injured eagle rested. Somewhere in the clear summer sky, approaching through the punishing heat, were more eagles carrying technology beyond conventional understanding, converging on his family's farm with unknown intentions. "This is my home," he said finally, a lifetime of Reynolds' stubbornness asserting itself. "My grandfather didn't abandon it during the Dust Bowl. My father rebuilt after the tornado of '98, and I'm not leaving because some high-tech eagles picked my cornfield for their rendezvous point." He turned back to Harper. "Besides, I saved that bird's life. I have a right to know what happens next." Agent Harper studied him for a moment, then nodded curtly. "Very well, but you'll follow security protocols precisely. Your survival may depend on it." She turned to her security officer. "Equip Mr. Reynolds with tactical communications and protective gear, and bring the electromagnetic field disruptor from the secondary vehicle. If these systems are hostile, conventional countermeasures may prove ineffective." As the officer departed to carry out her orders, Harper fixed Michael with an intense gaze. "Mr. Reynolds, what happens in the next hour may fundamentally change our understanding of the technologies monitoring our airspace and potentially the origins of those technologies. The fact that you're witnessing it is both extraordinary and potentially catastrophic. I need your absolute cooperation if we're all going to navigate this situation safely." Michael nodded, his mind racing to process everything he'd learned, while simultaneously preparing for whatever unknown confrontation approached from the northwest. "Just tell me what I need to do," he said, moving to the window where Sadie had begun growling softly, the dog's instincts already alerting to the approaching danger. Outside, federal agents moved with increasing urgency, deploying equipment and taking defensive positions around the property. In the distance, barely visible against the harsh summer sky, unusual flight patterns caught Michael's attention, birds moving with a synchronization that seemed too perfect to be natural, creating formations that shifted with geometric precision. "They're coming," Agent Harper said quietly, joining him at the window, "and they're not attempting to conceal their approach. That suggests either supreme confidence or desperate necessity." She checked her sidearm with practiced efficiency. Neither scenario typically ends well for bystanders. Michael Reynolds hadn't always been just a farmer in the remote plains of Nebraska. At 47, the lines etched into his sun-weathered face told the story of a man who had seen more of the world than most would assume before returning to take over the family farm 8 years ago. After his father's unexpected stroke, Michael had found himself the reluctant inheritor of the 180-acre property, a collection of aging equipment and a mortgage that seemed to grow despite his best efforts to reduce it. The Reynolds farm had once been prosperous, but changing climate conditions and rising costs had pushed it to the brink of insolvency. "Your agricultural background explains a few things," Agent Harper remarked, as she watched Michael check the tactical communication device her team had provided. His hands moved with the unconscious familiarity of someone who had used similar equipment before. "Your file mentioned service, but not specialized training." "Some records stay deliberately incomplete," Michael replied without looking up. 3 tours with the Army Rangers tends to leave certain impressions that don't fade." A ghost of a smile crossed the agent's face. "Who says we missed it? Sometimes it's useful to observe how people handle information asymmetry." Before Michael could respond, one of Harper's technicians approached with a tablet displaying real-time sensor data. "Ma'am, the approaching signatures have organized into a distinct formation, one lead subject with 4 flanking, maintaining precise spacing. Unusual energy readings from all 5, consistent with the technology profile we recovered from the shed specimen." Harper studied the display, her expression hardening. "They're implementing a recovery protocol. That formation is designed to create an electromagnetic containment field." She turned to Michael. "We need to move the injured eagle to our mobile containment unit. Previous incidents suggest these systems can triangulate quantum signatures at close range. The longer it stays in that location, the more precisely they can target it." Michael reached for his wide-brimmed hat, shield against the merciless summer sun. "I'll help. The bird seemed to respond to me earlier. Might keep it calm during transfer." As they prepared to venture into the scorching heat, Michael's mind drifted to his grandfather's stories about the property. Old Joseph Reynolds had claimed there was something special about this particular stretch of Nebraska soil, something that had led him to purchase it rather than more fertile land further east. He had spoken of unusual magnetic properties that occasionally affected farm equipment, strange atmospheric phenomena during electrical storms, and wildlife that behaved oddly during certain seasons. The family had dismissed these tales as the exaggerated memories of an aging farmer, or perhaps early signs of the dementia that would eventually claim him. But standing in his kitchen, surrounded by federal agents responding to unidentified aerial technology converging on his property, Michael wondered if his grandfather had been more perceptive than anyone had realized. The heat hit like a physical wall as they stepped outside, the temperature having climbed past 103 degrees. Across the yard, a team of agents was preparing a specialized vehicle, something that resembled a cross between an ambulance and a mobile laboratory. Its exterior was covered with what appeared to be a metallic mesh, and a satellite dish on its roof continuously adjusted its position in tiny, precise movements. "The Eagle's condition has stabilized significantly," one of the medical officers reported as they approached the equipment shed. "Bone regeneration rate exceeds normal parameters by approximately 300%. The embedded technology appears to be facilitating accelerated healing." Inside the shed, the temperature was notably cooler than outside, not just from shade, but as if the air itself was being actively conditioned. The Eagle rested on a modified examination table, its injured wing now partially extended rather than held tight against its body. Various monitoring devices surrounded it, their displays showing readings that Michael couldn't interpret, but which clearly held significance for the team of specialists. As Michael approached, the Eagle's head turned to track him with those unnervingly intelligent eyes. It made a soft, chirping sound that seemed entirely unlike normal eagle vocalizations. "It recognizes you," Agent Harper observed. "The control system has identified you as non-threatening, possibly beneficial." Michael approached slowly, speaking in the same calm, low voice he had used earlier when rescuing the bird. "Hey there, big fellow. These people are going to help you, but we need to move you somewhere safer." To the astonishment of the medical team, the Eagle shifted position, carefully maneuvering itself to make transfer easier. One wing remained partially extended, the injured one, but it was now visibly straighter than it had been during Michael's initial rescue. "Unprecedented cooperation," one of the specialists murmured, adjusting a scanner. "The system is either allowing voluntary compliance or actively facilitating it." As Michael helped secure the Eagle for transport, he noticed that the metallic band on its leg was now emitting a faint pulsing light, a soft blue glow that cycled in a regular pattern. When he touched the band lightly, a strange sensation traveled up his arm, not painful, but distinctly unusual, like the tingling of a mild electrical current mixed with the strange feeling of a limb falling asleep from restricted circulation. The Eagle fixed him with its penetrating gaze, and for a moment Michael had the unshakable impression that the bird was attempting to communicate directly with him. Its pupils dilated and contracted in a rhythmic pattern that seemed deliberately paced, rather than automatic biological response. One of the medical officers noticed his expression. "You're experiencing direct interface effects," she explained, checking readings on a handheld device. "The technology creates a low-level field that can interact with human neural activity. That's one reason we need to establish containment. Prolonged exposure has unpredictable effects." As they carefully moved the Eagle onto a specialized stretcher designed for wildlife transport, Michael felt a sudden, disorienting flash of something. Not quite images, not quite sounds, but information that seemed to bypass his normal senses and register directly in his consciousness. "Triangulation complete. Recovery assets inbound. Warning, Hostile interdiction team detected. The experience lasted only a fraction of a second, but left Michael momentarily dizzy. He braced himself against the examination table, blinking rapidly. As his vision cleared, "Mr. Reynolds." Agent Harper had noticed his sudden unsteadiness. "Are you all right?" Before Michael could respond, the eagle made a series of sharp, deliberate sounds. Not random vocalizations, but a clear pattern that reminded him of the SOS he'd heard earlier, though with different timing and complexity. The pattern triggered another flash in his mind, this time carrying something that felt distinctly like warning. "They know we're moving it," Michael said with sudden certainty. "The other birds, they've detected our activity, and they're accelerating their approach." Agent Harper stared at him intently. "How could you possibly know that?" Michael touched, his temples struggling to articulate the experience. "I don't know how I know, but I'm certain. It's like the eagle just told me." The medical officer who had mentioned the interface effects stepped forward, scanner in hand. "Neural synchronization," she said, after passing the device over Michael's head. "The control system is attempting to establish a secondary communication channel. Mr. Reynolds' previous military training may have established neural pathways that are particularly receptive to the type of direct interface this technology employs." A series of alarms suddenly blared from multiple monitoring stations. The eagle shifted restlessly on the stretcher, its eyes fixed on the ceiling of the shed, as if tracking something through the solid roof. "Energy spike at the western perimeter," one of Harper's officers called through the communication system. "Aerial formation has breached our outer sensor grid, moving at approximately 60 miles per hour at an altitude of 800 feet. Harper grabbed Michael's arm, pulling him toward the exit. "We need to move now. They're not just approaching anymore. They're initiating an active recovery protocol." As they rushed outside with the stretcher, the sky above Michael's property had transformed. The clear blue expanse was now marked by what appeared to be 5 distinct aerial forms. Eagles moving with synchronized precision, their flight patterns creating a perfect pentagonal formation. Their approach was methodical and direct, with none of the natural soaring or circling behavior typical of raptors. "Get the subject to the containment vehicle immediately," Harper shouted to her team. "Activate electromagnetic countermeasures at maximum intensity." The federal personnel moved with practiced efficiency, despite the clearly unprecedented situation, deploying devices that emitted pulsing waves of energy visible as rippling distortions in the air. Where these waves intersected with the approaching formation, the eagle's perfect synchronization seemed to waver momentarily, their flight patterns becoming briefly erratic before reforming with apparent effort. Michael stared upward, witnessing something he could scarcely comprehend. Birds moving with the precision of military aircraft, implementing what appeared to be evasive maneuvers in response to the countermeasures. As they drew closer, he could see that these eagles were larger than the injured one he had rescued, their wingspans stretching to dimensions that pushed the biological limits of the species. Agent Harper pulled him toward the containment vehicle. "Those disruption fields won't hold them back for long. Once they establish a recovery perimeter, conventional defense becomes nearly impossible." "What happens then?" Michael asked, unable to tear his eyes from the approaching formation. In previous small-scale incidents, the recovery systems were limited by direct line-of-sight requirements. They needed visual confirmation of the target. But this, she gestured toward the coordinated formation, this is unprecedented. They're not just trying to locate their missing unit. They're implementing a full-scale retrieval operation with environmental containment capabilities. Understanding dawned with horrific clarity. They're trying to secure the technology, regardless of what happens to the eagle or anyone near it. Harper nodded grimly. "And your farm, Mr. Reynolds, appears to be directly in their operational path." The first eagle to break formation accelerated ahead of the others, descending toward the open area between the equipment shed and the containment. A vehicle. Unlike the others, this eagle's feathers displayed unusual patterning, metallic highlights that caught the sun in ways that defied natural plumage. It moved with deliberate purpose, its eyes fixed on the stretcher carrying the injured. "Eagle, primary recovery unit has deployed." Harper spoke into her communication device. "Countermeasures authorized." Her personnel activated what appeared to be modified electromagnetic pulse generators, directing concentrated energy toward the approaching eagle. The bird's flight pattern faltered briefly, wings beating irregularly as if fighting against sudden turbulence. But instead of falling or retreating, its body seemed to shimmer, the metallic highlights in its feathers intensifying as if absorbing or deflecting the energy directed at it. "Adaptive shielding," one of the technicians called out. "It's reconfiguring its defense parameters in real time." The injured eagle on the stretcher suddenly became highly agitated, emitting a series of sharp cries while attempting to rise despite its injuries. Michael felt another flash of direct communication, more intense than before, carrying unmistakable urgency. Primary recovery compromised, security protocols activated, destruction sequence imminent. "They're not here to rescue it," Michael said with sudden realization. "The approaching eagles, they've been sent to destroy the evidence, not recover it." Harper turned to him sharply. "How could you possibly know their operational parameters?" Michael pointed to the injured eagle. "It's warning us. The system is designed with fail-safes. If recovery isn't possible, elimination becomes the priority." The lead eagle from the approaching formation suddenly altered its behavior, climbing sharply before beginning a steep diving attack, its trajectory aimed directly at the stretcher. Its talons extended, revealing metallic enhancements that gleamed unnaturally in the harsh sunlight. "Hostile approach confirmed," Harper shouted. "Defensive measures now." Two agents deployed what appeared to be specialized net launchers, firing a mesh of fine metallic filaments into the path of the diving eagle. The bird seemed to register the threat, attempting an evasive maneuver that would have been impossible for a natural eagle, but the net expanded rapidly, entangling its wings and disrupting its attack. The captured eagle thrashed against the restraining mesh, emitting sounds that no natural bird could produce, high-frequency bursts that caused electronic equipment in the vicinity to malfunction momentarily. Where the net made contact with its enhanced feathers, small electrical discharges were visible, creating a web of blue-white energy that crawled across the metallic filaments. The remaining 4 eagles immediately shifted their formation, responding to the capture of their lead unit with a synchronized attack pattern. They descended in perfect coordination, creating a diamond formation that allowed overlapping fields of coverage while maintaining maximum maneuverability. "Get that bird in the containment unit now," Harper ordered, drawing what appeared to be a specialized sidearm, larger than a standard pistol with unusual modifications to its barrel and power supply. The medical team rushed the stretcher toward the waiting vehicle, but their path was suddenly cut off as one of the attacking eagles executed a precision dive, pulling up at the last moment to create a barrier of disturbed air that knocked 2 of the personnel off their feet. Michael reacted instinctively, diving forward to stabilize the stretcher before it could topple. The injured eagle locked eyes with him, and another burst of information flooded his consciousness. "Defensive countermeasures available. Requires direct neural authorization. Accept integration," without fully understanding what he was agreeing. 2. Michael found himself responding mentally, "Yes, activate." The effect was immediate and extraordinary. The metallic band on the eagle's leg pulsed with sudden intensity, and a wave of energy radiated outward in concentric rings. Where this energy encountered the attacking eagles, their coordinated movements faltered, as if key components of their control systems had been temporarily disrupted. "What just happened?" Harper demanded, helping Michael secure the stretcher. Again, I think it just deployed some kind of countermeasure against the others, Michael explained, struggling to process the flood of unfamiliar sensations coursing through his nervous system. It's like it asked for permission to defend itself, and I gave it. The medical officer monitoring the eagle's vital signs looked up from her instruments with astonishment. The embedded system has initiated direct neural pairing with Mr. Reynolds. It's using his bioelectric field as an amplification mechanism for its defensive protocols. Harper stared at Michael, reassessing the situation with rapid calculation. Can you control it? Direct these countermeasures? Michael shook his head, still disoriented by the strange connection forming in his mind. Not control exactly, it's more like consent. The system presents options, and I can accept or refuse. The momentary advantage created by the disruption wave was already fading. The 4 attacking eagles quickly recalibrated, adjusting their approach to compensate for the defensive measure. They spread wider, reducing the effectiveness of any similar energy pulse by increasing the distance between them. They're adapting, Harper observed grimly, learning from each encounter. They had nearly reached the containment vehicle when the sky above them darkened unexpectedly. Looking up, Michael saw a 6th eagle, significantly larger than the others, with distinctive markings that suggested more extensive technological enhancement. Its arrival hadn't registered on the perimeter sensors, suggesting stealth capabilities beyond the other units. "Command unit detected," one of Harper's specialists called out, monitoring readings from a portable scanner. "Signature matches the Berlin incident from 2018. Harper's expression tightened at this information. "That's not possible. The Berlin unit was neutralized." "Apparently not completely," the specialist responded, adjusting her equipment. "Energy pattern is degraded but functional, operating at approximately 78% capacity compared to previous readings." The newly arrived eagle, the command unit, circled once above the farm before settling on the roof of Michael's barn. Unlike the frantic activity of the other birds, it perched with eerie stillness, its head rotating with mechanical precision as it surveyed the chaotic scene below. "What's a command unit?" Michael asked, his eyes fixed on the imposing bird. "A superior model," Harper explained tersely. "Enhanced processing capabilities, improved autonomous decision-making, more extensive physical modifications. We encountered one in Berlin 5 years ago during an international incident that was officially attributed to conventional drone activity." The injured eagle on the stretcher became increasingly agitated as the command unit watched from its elevated position. Michael felt another burst of information, this time accompanied by images that formed directly in his mind. Schematics, technical specifications, threat assessments. Command override detected, priority shift imminent, evacuation essential. "It's going to change tactics," Michael warned, the alien knowledge flowing through his consciousness faster than he could fully process. "The command unit doesn't just control the others, it can reprogram them, shift their operational parameters." As if confirming his warning, the command unit emitted a complex series of sounds, not natural eagle calls, but a structured sequence of tones that carried across the farmyard with unusual clarity. The 4 attacking eagles immediately broke off their individual approach patterns and reformed into a new configuration, a linear formation that positioned them directly between the containment vehicle and the barn. "Containment team, be advised," Harper spoke into her communication device. "Hostile units have established a blocking formation. Prepare alternate extraction route Delta." Before the team could respond, the command unit released another sequence of tones, and the 4 eagles simultaneously opened their beaks in an unnatural, synchronized motion. What emerged wasn't sound, but concentrated beams of energy, narrow, pulsing ribbons of blue-white light that converged at a single point directly in front of the containment vehicle. Where the beams intersected, the air itself seemed to distort, creating a visible ripple that expanded outward in a perfect sphere. As this distortion field grew, electronic systems within its radius began failing, communications cutting out, monitoring equipment shutting down, even the specialized countermeasure devices falling silent. "EMP sphere," one of the technicians shouted as his equipment died in his hands. "They're creating a dead zone." The containment vehicle's engines sputtered and died as the sphere expanded to envelop it. Emergency lights briefly flashed before they too went dark, leaving the specialized transport as nothing more than an inert metal shell. "Fall back to secondary positions," Harper ordered, drawing her teams away from the expanding interference field. "Switch to hardened communication systems." Michael felt the neural connection with the injured eagle intensify as conventional technology failed around them. Rather than being disrupted by the EMP effect, the link seemed to strengthen, becoming more defined as competing electronic signals disappeared. Primary systems compromised, initiating emergency protocol, direct neural interface expanding. The sensation that followed was unlike anything Michael had experienced, a sudden expansion of awareness that extended beyond his physical senses. He could perceive energy fields that should have been invisible, detect minute variations in the electromagnetic spectrum, and most disturbingly, access fragmented data streams flowing between the attacking eagles and their command unit. "They're creating a perimeter," he said, his voice sounding distant even to his own ears as his consciousness divided between physical reality and the flood of information from the neural interface. "The command unit is preparing for direct intervention. It wants to examine the injured eagle personally before determining final disposition." Harper stared at him with growing concern. "Reynolds, your pupils are dilating irregularly, and you're displaying symptoms consistent with neural overstimulation. We need to break this connection before it causes permanent damage." Michael shook his head, fighting to maintain his grip on conventional reality while processing the alien data stream. "Can't break it now. It's our only advantage. The countermeasures aren't working, and they've disabled our technology. This connection is giving us intelligence we can't get any other way." Through the neural link, Michael sensed the command unit's intentions with growing clarity. It wasn't simply seeking to destroy evidence of the technology. It was conducting a field evaluation, attempting to determine how and why the injured eagle had established direct communication with a human subject. The implications seemed to hold special significance within the system's operational parameters. As the medical team struggled to manage the injured eagle without their electronic equipment, the bird's condition appeared to be improving rather than deteriorating. The damaged wing now extended more fully, the bone visibly realigning beneath. The feathers, the metallic band on its leg pulsed with increasing intensity, and the small device embedded in its wing had begun emitting a soft, steady glow. "It's healing itself," one of the medical officers observed, watching the accelerated regeneration with professional fascination despite the chaotic circumstances. "The system is redirecting energy to prioritize structural repairs." Michael felt another shift in the neural interface, this time carrying distinct impressions that felt almost like gratitude. The sensation was difficult to interpret through the filter of human emotion, but the intent seemed clear. The eagle, or the system controlling it, recognized Michael's protection as beneficial and was responding accordingly. The command unit suddenly took flight from its perch on the barn roof, circling once before descending toward the stretcher where the injured eagle lay. As it approached, the 4 eagles maintaining the EMP field adjusted their positions, creating an opening through which the command unit could pass while maintaining the electronic disruption zone. "It's coming to direct inspect the injured unit," Michael warned, the neural link providing real-time intelligence about the command unit's intentions. "This is some kind of specialized evaluation protocol." Agent Harper quickly assessed their diminishing options. With conventional countermeasures disabled by the EMP field and the containment vehicle rendered inoperative, their capacity to protect the injured eagle had been severely compromised. "What's the command unit's primary objective?" she asked Michael directly, recognizing that his unusual connection had become their most valuable intelligence source. Michael closed his eyes briefly, focusing on the data flowing through the neural interface. Assessment first, then. Retrieval or termination, depending on the findings. It's specifically interested in how the injured eagle established connection with me. That outcome wasn't part of standard operating parameters. The command unit landed with precision on the ground near the stretcher, its movements displaying none of the natural characteristics of an eagle. It approached with methodical purpose, head tilting at exact angles as it examined the injured bird from multiple perspectives. Up close, the extent of its modifications became apparent. Subtle mechanical components integrated with biological structures, feathers interwoven with hair-thin filaments of unknown material, eyes that contained unmistakable optical enhancements behind the natural iris. Through the neural link, Michael sensed a complex exchange of data between the command unit and the injured eagle. Not conventional communication, but massive information transfer, occurring at speeds that human consciousness could barely register. Fragments of this exchange filtered through his perception: status reports, damage assessments, operational parameters, and most significantly, evaluation of the neural interface with the human subject. The command unit extended one wing toward the injured eagle in what appeared to be a scanning motion. Where the wing beat passed over the embedded technology, both the metallic band and the wing device pulsed in response, creating a synchronized pattern of light that conveyed information Michael couldn't fully interpret. Assessment complete. Anomalous interface detected. Human neural pattern recorded. Retrieval authorized. The message flashed through the neural link with crystal clarity, triggering an immediate response from the injured eagle. Its eyes locked with Michael's, and a final burst of information transferred directly to his consciousness. Not data this time, but something that felt remarkably like a warning. Retrieval protocol includes memory erasure. Defend. In that critical moment, as the command unit prepared to implement its retrieval protocol, something extraordinary happened. The injured eagle Michael had rescued suddenly rose from the stretcher, its damaged wing now partially functional. With surprising agility, it interposed itself between Michael and the command unit, its posture distinctly protective rather than threatened. "It's defending you," Agent Harper said, astonishment evident in her voice despite her professional composure. "The system has prioritized your protection over its own retrieval." The command unit paused, its mechanical movements momentarily suspended as it processed this unexpected development. Through the neural link, Michael sensed confusion, or whatever passed for confusion, in the hybrid intelligence now evaluating the situation. The injured eagle's behavior represented a significant deviation from established protocols, an anomaly that required reassessment. Taking advantage of this momentary hesitation, Harper signaled to two agents who had maintained position on the periphery of the EMP field. They moved with coordinated precision, deploying what appeared to be specialized equipment untouched by the electronic disruption, purely mechanical devices that operated without vulnerable circuitry. "Analog countermeasures," Harper explained, noting Michael's questioning glance. "Sometimes old technology proves more resilient than new." The devices expanded into a network of reflective surfaces, creating a complex array of angled mirrors that caught the harsh sunlight and redirected it in concentrated beams toward the four eagles maintaining the EMP field. The sudden, intense Light overwhelmed their enhanced optical systems, forcing them to break formation momentarily to protect their vision. In that brief window of disruption, the EMP field flickered and contracted, allowing Harper's team to reactivate a portion of their electronic countermeasures. The containment vehicle's backup systems engaged, emergency lights blinking as auxiliary power came online. "Get the primary subject into the vehicle now," Harper ordered, her team moving immediately to secure the injured Eagle. The command unit registered the threat to its operation and responded with alarming efficiency. It launched itself skyward, wings extending to their full impressive span, and emitted a complex sequence of tones that carried explicit instructions to its subordinate units. The four Eagles immediately abandoned their individual positions and reformed into an attack configuration, diving toward the containment team with synchronized precision. Through the neural link, Michael received another burst of information from the injured Eagle, fragmented but urgent. Command vulnerability identified. Central processor located at base of skull. Concentrated electromagnetic pulse will disrupt primary functions. Michael grabbed Harper's arm. "The command unit has a weakness, a central processor at the base of its skull. If you can hit it with a focused EMP, you might be able to neutralize it." Harper didn't waste time questioning how he'd obtained this intelligence. "Do we have a portable pulse generator still functioning?" she called to her technical team. One of the specialists held up a device roughly the size of a small laptop. "Backup unit was shielded during the initial EMP. Operational, but limited. Range would need to be within 5 meters for effective targeting." "That's too close," Harper assessed, watching the command unit circling overhead, directing its subordinates with tactical precision. "We couldn't get within 20 meters without being intercepted." Michael felt the neural interface shift again, the injured Eagle projecting a series of images directly into his consciousness. Schematics, tactical analyses, and most surprisingly, a detailed map of Michael's farm, with specific locations highlighted. "The barn," Michael said suddenly. "The metal roof is constructed with high copper content. My grandfather installed it in the 70s during a lightning storm phase. The Eagle is suggesting we can use it as a natural amplifier for the EMP, extending its effective range if precisely targeted." Harper quickly evaluated this unexpected strategy. "That could work, but we'd need to lure the command unit into position. These systems are too intelligent to be easily manipulated into a trap." The injured Eagle, now securely placed in the containment vehicle but still maintaining its neural link with Michael, provided the final piece of the tactical puzzle. Command unit prioritizes direct assessment of anomalous interfaces. Activate full neural synchronization to draw attention. "I can draw it to the barn," Michael said, understanding flowing through the enhanced connection. "The command unit is specifically interested in how I've established this link with the injured Eagle. If I position myself near the barn and intensify the neural connection, it will prioritize direct investigation." "That's too dangerous," Harper objected immediately. "You'd be deliberately making yourself a target for a system we barely understand." Michael met her gaze with calm resolve. "We're out of alternatives, Agent Harper. Your team is outmatched by their coordination and adaptability. This is the one advantage they didn't anticipate, that one of their units would choose to share tactical information with a human." He looked toward the containment vehicle, where the injured Eagle watched him through the reinforced window, its intelligent eyes conveying understanding beyond natural avian capacity. "Besides, I made a promise when I rescued that bird, and a Reynolds keeps his word, even to an Eagle with borrowed intelligence." Harper studied him for a moment, recognizing the same calm determination she'd seen in other exceptional individuals during her years of service. People who found their greatest strength not in extraordinary ability, but in simple, unshakable commitment to doing what was right, regardless of personal risk. "Prepare the pulse generator," she ordered her technical team, "and get me a direct line to Mr. Reynolds, something that can function within the EMP field if possible." One of her specialists produced what appeared to be an old-fashioned walkie-talkie, hardened communications device, basic technology with specialized shielding, limited range but should maintain function even in strong electromagnetic interference. As the team prepared the operation, Michael knelt briefly beside the containment vehicle, placing his palm against the window where the injured eagle had pressed its wing. The neural link intensified at the proximity, and Michael felt a strange sensation, almost like gratitude, though filtered through systems never designed to convey human emotion. "I don't know what you are or where you came from," Michael said quietly, "but you chose to trust me when you were vulnerable. That means something, regardless of what technology is involved." The eagle tilted its head in that unnervingly intelligent manner, and through the link came a response that felt both alien and deeply familiar, a recognition of shared purpose that transcended the vast differences between them. With renewed determination, Michael stood and took the hardened communication device from Harper. "The barn has a rear entrance on the north side," he explained, orienting her team. "Once I've drawn the command unit into position, your technical specialist will need clear line of sight to the roof apex. That's where the copper concentration is highest." Harper nodded, quickly reorganizing her personnel. "We'll position the pulse generator behind the silo. It offers both cover and the necessary elevation for proper targeting. 30 seconds after you confirm the command unit is in position, we'll activate the pulse." As final preparations were made, the four subordinate eagles continued their coordinated harassment of the federal agents, executing precision diving, attacks that forced the defenders to maintain scattered positions rather than organize an effective counter-strategy. Above this tactical chaos, the command unit maintained its observational position, directing operations with calculating efficiency. "It's learning our patterns," Harper noted grimly. "Each attack is more precise than the last, probing for weaknesses in our defensive formation." Michael checked the communication device, ensuring it was functioning properly, then met Harper's gaze one final time. "Once this starts, don't hesitate regardless of my position. These things are too dangerous to allow continued operation, especially if they decide to expand their attention beyond this farm." Harper acknowledged his instruction with a professional nod that nonetheless conveyed genuine respect. "Good hunting, Reynolds." Michael moved with deliberate purpose toward the barn, using the distraction of the ongoing aerial attacks to maintain relative concealment. As he approached the structure where generations of Reynolds had stored equipment and harvest, he felt the weight of his family legacy merging with the unprecedented situation at hand. His grandfather's inexplicable decision to install a copper-rich roof, his father's insistence on maintaining the old building rather than replacing it with modern construction, his own choice to return to the farm after his military service. All these decisions converging on this moment. Slipping through the rear entrance, Michael entered the cavernous interior of the barn. Farm equipment stood in organized rows, his father's legacy of meticulous maintenance despite financial challenges. Shafts of sunlight penetrated through strategic ventilation gaps in the metal roof, creating distinct columns of illumination. In the otherwise shadowed space, Michael positioned himself in the center of the main floor, directly beneath the highest point of the roof where the copper concentration would provide maximum amplification. Once in position, Michael closed his eyes and focused on the neural link with the injured eagle, deliberately intensifying the connection. The effect was immediate and profound. His awareness expanded beyond physical limitations, senses sharpening, to detect subtle electromagnetic variations in his surroundings. Most significantly, he could now perceive the distinct energy signatures of the engineered eagles outside, each one glowing in his enhanced perception like a unique constellation of data points. Through this expanded awareness, Michael projected his presence deliberately, not concealing the neural connection but amplifying it, creating an electromagnetic signature that would register as an anomaly to the command unit's sophisticated sensors. Attention-focused, command unit has detected intensified neural interface. Approach imminent. The warning filtered through the link from the injured eagle, still monitoring the tactical situation from within the containment vehicle. Michael maintained his position, continuing to broadcast his unusual connection while tracking the command unit's movement through his enhanced perception. Outside, the attacking pattern of the 4 subordinate eagles suddenly shifted, their coordinated harassment of Harper's team breaking off as they received new instructions from their commander. They reformed into a perimeter configuration around the barn, establishing observation positions rather than continuing offensive operations. "Command unit is responding," Michael reported through the hardened communication device. "Subordinates have established containment pattern around the barn." Harper's voice came through with minimal static. "Confirmed. Command unit has broken observational position and is moving toward your location. Pulse generator in position and ready for activation on your signal." Michael sensed the command unit's approach before he heard the distinctive sound of powerful wings displacing air. The barn's main doors remained closed, but the upper access hatch, designed for ventilation and loading hay from mechanical lifts, stood open to the summer sky. Through this opening, the command unit made its calculated entrance, descending through a column of sunlight with an otherworldly grace that belied its partially mechanical nature. It landed on a crossbeam 15 feet above the barn floor, positioning itself with precise tactical advantage, elevated enough for superior observation while maintaining multiple exit options. Its enhanced eyes fixed on Michael with unsettling intensity, optical components visibly adjusting within the natural iris as it conducted detailed analysis. Through his expanded awareness, Michael could sense the complex scanning processes being directed at him, electromagnetic, thermal, and something more exotic that registered as rippling distortions in what he perceived as the energy field surrounding all living things. "Command unit has entered the barn," Michael reported quietly into the communication device, "positioned on upper crossbeam, conducting intensive scanning." "Pulse generator targeted and charged," came Harper's response, "awaiting your confirmation of optimal positioning." The command unit tilted its head in that mechanical manner that highlighted its artificial components, then spread its wings to display their full impressive span. The movement wasn't natural eagle behavior, but rather a deliberate demonstration of capability, a calculated intimidation tactic directed at the human it was evaluating. With methodical purpose, it launched from the crossbeam, descending to land on a hay bale approximately 10 feet from Michael's position. At this closer range, the extensive modifications to its natural form became even more apparent. Subtle, mechanical articulations beneath the feathers, metallic highlights integrated with biological structures, and most strikingly, eyes that contained unmistakable technological enhancements behind the natural avian anatomy. Now fully focused on Michael, the command unit initiated direct interaction. It opened its beak in that unnatural synchronized motion and emitted a complex sequence of tones, not communication meant for other eagles, but a deliberate attempt to interface with the neural connection it had detected. The effect was immediate and disorienting. Michael felt the established link with the injured eagle suddenly challenged by a much more powerful signal. The command unit attempting to override the existing connection and establish direct control. The competing neural interface manifested as painful pressure inside his skull, information flooding his consciousness faster than he could process. Warning. Command override attempt detected. Defensive protocols engaged, but insufficient against primary unit. The injured eagle's warning came through in fragmented bursts, its connection weakening under the command unit's superior technology. Michael fought to maintain the original neural link, intuitively understanding that allowing the command unit to establish dominant connection would compromise not just the tactical operation, but potentially his own autonomy. The command unit registered his resistance and adjusted its approach. Rather than forcing complete override, it established a parallel interface, creating a secondary connection that allowed it to inject data directly into Michael's consciousness, while monitoring his responses. Images and concepts flooded Michael's mind, schematics more detailed than those the injured eagle had shared, operational parameters for the entire eagle network, and most disturbingly, fragmented glimpses of similar installations in other biological hosts spanning multiple species and geographical locations. The scale of the operation was far beyond what Harper's team had estimated. Not isolated incidents, but a comprehensive global monitoring system using enhanced wildlife as mobile surveillance platforms. More troubling than the scope was the origin of this technology. As the command unit continued its information transfer, Michael perceived fragments of data that defied conventional understanding. Manufacturing techniques impossible with current human technology, algorithmic structures that operated on principles beyond established computer science, and energy management systems that violated understood physical limitations. This wasn't military technology repurposed for wildlife surveillance. This was something fundamentally different, something that had been adapted to mimic human technological signatures while operating on principles that originated elsewhere. Through the competing neural interfaces, Michael maintained enough presence of mind to assess the command unit's position relative to the tactical plan. It had moved to the precise location needed, directly beneath the apex of the copper-rich roof, its attention fully focused on the neural interface process rather than its physical surroundings. "Target is in optimal position," Michael managed to report through gritted teeth, fighting against the increasing pressure of the competing neural connections. "Execute in 30 seconds. "Confirmed," came Harper's terse response. "Stand by for pulse activation. Clear the target zone if possible." The command unit registered Michael's communication and immediately intensified its override attempt, recognizing the potential threat. The pressure in Michael's skull increased exponentially, vision blurring as the powerful system attempted to establish complete neural dominance. Through this overwhelming assault, another presence made itself felt, the injured eagle, fighting to maintain its connection despite the command unit's superior capabilities. It couldn't match the raw power of the command unit, but it operated with unexpected adaptability, creating protective pathways through the neural interface that shielded critical aspects of Michael's consciousness from complete override. "Move now, 15 seconds to pulse activation, severing temporary connection." The warning came with sudden clarity, cutting through the chaotic information flood from the command unit. Michael understood immediately. The injured eagle was creating a momentary distraction by deliberately terminating its neural link, which would trigger automatic response protocols in the command unit systems. The connection with the injured eagle vanished abruptly, creating a sudden void in the neural interface. As predicted, the command unit devoted processing resources to analyzing this unexpected development, momentarily reducing its focus on Michael. In that brief window of opportunity, Michael lunged sideways, rolling behind a large piece of farm, equipment positioned against the barn wall. The command unit registered his movement too late, its powerful wings already extending to pursue, when Harper's voice came through the communication device with calm precision. "Pulse activating now. Cover your eyes and stay down." The pulse generator fired, sending a concentrated electromagnetic burst toward the barn's copper roof. The specialized metal amplified and focused the energy as predicted, creating a downward-directed cone of electromagnetic disruption precisely targeted on the command unit's position. The effect was spectacular and immediate. Where the focused pulse struck the command unit, electrical discharges cascaded across its enhanced body, creating a web of blue-white energy that penetrated beneath the feathers to the mechanical components hidden within. The eagle convulsed in a manner that no natural creature could, its movements betraying the mechanical nature of much of its internal structure. Most significantly, the precise targeting of the pulse struck the vulnerable processor at the base of its skull, the critical weakness the injured eagle had revealed through the neural link. The specialized component overloaded instantly, releasing a visible burst of energy that manifested as a small, concentrated flash of light from the eagle's eyes and beak. The command unit collapsed mid-movement, its complex systems failing catastrophically under the precisely targeted electromagnetic attack. Unlike a natural creature, it didn't thrash or struggle. The mechanical components simply ceased function, leaving the biological portions without operational control. Through the barn's open upper hatch, Michael could hear sudden chaos erupting outside. The 4 subordinate eagles reacting to the loss of their command unit with uncoordinated, erratic movements. Without central direction, their coordinated tactics dissolved into individual behaviors that more closely resembled natural eagles, though still influenced by their technological enhancements. "Command unit neutralized," Michael reported through the communication device, cautiously approaching the fallen eagle. "Subordinate units appear to have lost coordinated function." "Confirmed," Harper responded, a note of carefully controlled triumph in her voice. 3 subordinates are retreating at high speed. 1 remains in erratic flight pattern above the farm. Technical team is deploying secondary containment measures now. Michael knelt beside the fallen command unit, examining it with both caution and curiosity. Despite the catastrophic failure of its control systems, the biological components remained intact. A reminder that beneath the sophisticated technology was a real eagle, perhaps once as natural as any other, before being transformed into something beyond nature's design. The barn doors opened, allowing Agent Harper and her technical team to enter with specialized equipment. They moved with practiced efficiency, securing the command unit in a containment device similar to the one housing the injured eagle Michael had rescued. "Preliminary readings indicate complete system failure," one of the technicians reported after scanning the fallen eagle. "Biological components remain viable, but all technological systems have ceased function." Harper nodded with satisfaction, then turned to Michael with newfound respect in her expression. "That was exceptional work, Reynolds. The tactical application of your farm's infrastructure provided exactly the advantage we needed." Michael managed a tired smile, the aftermath of the neural interface experience leaving him drained but alert. 3 generations of Reynolds' stubbornness finally paid off. "My grandfather insisted this roof would protect against things we can't see. I always thought he was being metaphorical." As the technical team continued their work, securing the fallen command unit for transport, Michael felt a familiar presence at the edge of his consciousness, a gentle reconnection of the neural link with the injured eagle, now reaching out from the containment vehicle outside. Unlike the overwhelming flood of information from the command unit, this connection felt almost companionable, an exchange rather than an imposition. Through this restored link came a simple impression that required no translation: gratitude. "What happens now?" Michael asked, turning to Harper as they exited the barn together. "To the eagles, I mean." Harper considered her response carefully. "The technology will be secured and studied, of course. As for the eagles themselves, Those that can be rehabilitated will be. These are still protected species, regardless of how they've been modified. She paused, studying him with clinical assessment. And you'll need to be monitored for potential after effects of the neural interface exposure. Direct connection with technology of this nature is unprecedented in our records. Michael nodded, understanding the necessity, while already sensing that the connection had changed him in ways that might not register on conventional medical scans. His awareness remained subtly enhanced, perception extending beyond normal human limitations, to detect energy patterns and electromagnetic variations that should have been invisible. "And the property?" he asked, gesturing to the farm around them. "I'm assuming there's a reason these things converged here specifically." "That's a more complex question," Harper acknowledged. "Preliminary analysis suggests your land may have certain natural properties that facilitate the type of transmission these systems utilize. Your grandfather may have sensed something intuitively that our instruments are only now beginning to measure." She studied the horizon thoughtfully. "We'll need to establish a monitoring station, discreet of course, and with minimal impact on your normal operations. The data could prove invaluable in tracking and containing similar systems elsewhere." As they approached the containment, your vehicle, Michael felt the neural link with the injured eagle strengthen with proximity. Through this connection came not just data, but something more profound, a recognition of shared purpose that transcended the vast differences between them. The eagle watched him through the reinforced window, its intelligent gaze conveying understanding beyond natural avian capacity. In that moment, Michael recognized that despite the technological manipulations, the essential nature of the eagle remained a wild creature adapted to survive in changing circumstances, maintaining its core identity, even when modified by forces beyond its control. The technical team had finished securing the command unit and was preparing both eagles for transport. As the containment vehicle's engine started, ready to take these extraordinary beings to a secure facility for further study, Michael placed his palm against the window one final time. "Will I see it again?" he asked Harper, already knowing the answer but needing to hear it confirmed. "That would be against standard protocol," she replied, then added with the faintest hint of a smile. "But this case has already broken numerous precedents. I'll make a note in my report that the subject responded unusually well to your presence, which might justify periodic evaluation visits to assess long-term neural interface effects." As the containment vehicle prepared to depart, leading a convoy of federal vehicles away from the Reynolds farm, Michael stood on his porch, watching this extraordinary chapter of his life literally driving away. Sadie pressed against his leg, offering the simple comfort of normal companionship after hours of unprecedented strangeness. The setting sun cast long shadows across fields that had been in his family for generations, land that now revealed itself to be more significant than anyone had realized. His grandfather's intuitive understanding, his father's stubborn preservation of seemingly outdated structures, his own decision to return to these roots after experiencing the wider world, all part of a pattern he was only beginning to comprehend. "Well, girl," he said to Sadie, scratching behind her ears as her tail wagged with uncomplex joy. "Looks like the Reynolds farm might be growing something more important than corn." As twilight deepened across the Nebraska plains, Michael felt the faintest echo of the neural link, not an active connection, but a resonance, like the memory of music that lingers after the song ends. Whatever had happened during those extraordinary hours had changed him, opening channels of perception that couldn't simply be closed again. Tomorrow would bring federal monitoring equipment, non-disclosure agreement enforcement, and the complex process of returning to seemingly normal farm operations, with the knowledge that nothing was quite as simple as it had appeared. But for tonight, Michael Reynolds stood on land that had supported his family for generations, now revealed as a nexus point in a mystery extending far beyond the horizons of his fields. And somewhere in the fading light, he could have sworn he glimpsed the silhouette of an eagle circling once above his property before disappearing into the gathering darkness. Whether a natural bird or something more, he couldn't be certain. But in that moment, it didn't matter. Some connections once established transcended the boundaries between species, between technology and nature, between the known and the yet-to-be discovered. Some connections remained, even after the story seemed to end. 3 weeks had passed since the extraordinary confrontation on the Reynolds farm. The physical evidence of that day had been meticulously removed. Federal vehicles no longer patrolled the perimeter, the specialized equipment had been dismantled and transported away, and even the disturbed soil where the command unit had fallen had been carefully restored to its natural state. To casual observation, the property appeared exactly as it had before. A modest Nebraska farm fighting against economic pressures and climate challenges like countless others across the Midwest. But Michael Reynolds knew better. The changes that remained weren't visible to the naked eye, but existed in layers of reality most people never perceived. A discreet monitoring station had been established in an unused corner of his property, disguised as an agricultural research project studying drought-resistant crops. Occasional visits from individuals identifying themselves as Department of Agriculture specialists maintained the cover story while allowing Agent Harper's team to collect essential data from the unique electromagnetic properties of the land. More significantly, Michael himself had changed in ways that defied conventional explanation. The neural interface experience had left permanent alterations to his perception, subtle but unmistakable enhancements to his awareness that allowed him to sense energy patterns, electromagnetic variations, and occasionally fragments of digital communication passing through nearby networks. These abilities fluctuated in strength and clarity, more pronounced when he visited certain locations on his property, particularly the area where he had first discovered the injured eagle. It was to this spot that Michael found himself returning, frequently during the quiet evening hours after completing his farm work. Something about that particular section of his eastern cornfield seemed to resonate with his enhanced perception, creating a focal point where the lingering neural changes in his consciousness aligned with whatever unique properties existed in the land itself. Tonight, a sunset painted the vast Nebraska sky in spectacular hues of orange and purple. Michael stood at the exact location where he had found the eagle, Sadie sitting contentedly at his feet. The corn had continued growing despite the challenging conditions, now standing nearly 6 feet tall in organized rows that stretched toward the horizon. In the gentle evening breeze, the plants swayed rhythmically, creating a soothing rustle that had been the soundtrack to generations of Reynolds' family evenings. "Beautiful evening," came a familiar voice from behind him. Michael turned to find Agent Harper approaching along the narrow path between corn rows. She had exchanged her formal attire for more practical clothing, jeans, boots, and a light jacket suitable for the cooling evening temperature, but maintained the alert, observant bearing that identified her profession regardless of her outfit. "You could have called ahead," Michael observed with a small smile, not actually surprised by her unannounced visit. In the weeks since the incident, he had occasionally sensed her presence before she physically arrived, another inexplicable aspect of his altered perception. "Professional habit," she replied unapologetically. "Besides, I wanted to observe you in your natural environment without advance preparation. Our monitoring station has been detecting unusual activity patterns centered on this specific location, particularly during evening hours." Michael gestured to the cornfield around them, "Just checking my crops and enjoying the sunset. Nothing unusual about a farmer walking his fields." Harper studied him with the penetrating gaze that seemed to be standard issue for FBI agents. Most farmers don't generate localized electromagnetic anomalies during their evening strolls. Reynolds. That got his attention. I'm causing measurable effects? She nodded, producing a small handheld device from her jacket pocket. Specialized field detector. The readings spike whenever you spend more than 15 minutes in this vicinity, especially during transition periods like dawn and dusk. Michael absorbed this information with a thoughtful nod. He had felt something happening during these evening visits, a resonance between his enhanced perception and something embedded in the land itself, but hadn't realized it was creating effects substantial enough to register on instruments. I'm not doing it deliberately, he explained. It's more like tuning in to something that's already here, like finding the right frequency on an old radio. Harper activated the device, watching its display with professional interest. The phenomenon appears harmless, possibly beneficial. The monitoring team has observed accelerated growth rates in vegetation within the affected radius, approximately 12% above normal despite the ongoing drought conditions. She gestured toward the thriving corn surrounding them. Your experimental drought-resistant crop is outperforming agricultural projections by significant margins. The soil moisture retention in this section has improved markedly compared to baseline measurements, despite receiving identical irrigation to the rest of your fields. Michael looked at the healthy plants with renewed appreciation. He had noticed their exceptional progress, but attributed it to the experimental seed variants he'd invested in before the eagle incident. The idea that his altered consciousness might be influencing their growth added another layer to the already extraordinary situation. So I'm what? Accidentally terraforming my own farm by taking evening walks? He asked, not entirely joking. The science team has a more technical term for it, Harper replied, something along the lines of neurologically mediated electromagnetic field enhancement resulting in accelerated biological processes. But your description is essentially correct, if oversimplified. She deactivated the device and returned it to her pocket, which brings me to the official purpose of my visit. The research division has a proposal they'd like you to consider. Michael raised an eyebrow. I thought my participation was already covered under the non-disclosure agreement. This would be something more substantial, a formal research partnership rather than passive monitoring. The preliminary data from your property has significant implications for agricultural sustainability, drought mitigation, and possibly climate resilience on a broader scale. She gestured for them to walk, and they began moving slowly through the cornfield as the last light of day faded into dusk. We're offering funding, technical support, and expanded infrastructure disguised as agricultural innovation research. In exchange, you would participate in structured studies designed to better understand and potentially replicate the effects you're generating. Michael considered the proposal as they walked. The financial support would certainly help secure the farm's future. The Reynolds property had been teetering on the edge of insolvency for years, with each season bringing new challenges that eroded his limited resources. But more than the practical considerations, he felt drawn to the possibility of understanding what was happening to him and his land. And the eagles? He asked, the question that had been foremost in his mind since they'd been transported away. The one I rescued. How is it doing? Harper's expression softened slightly, the most emotion she typically allowed herself to display in professional contexts. Recovery exceeding expectations. The wing has healed completely, and the biological systems are stable despite the integrated technology. She hesitated, then added, "It continues to display unusual behavioral patterns when your name is mentioned or when shown images of your property. The neural connection may have established more permanent pathways than initially theorized." "Can I see it?" Michael asked directly, stopping to face her in the gathering darkness. "That's the second part of the proposal," Harper acknowledged. "The research team believes the study would benefit significantly from periodic controlled interaction between you and the subject. The neural interface created properties in both of you that appear symbiotic in nature. Continued connection might enhance our understanding of both the technology and its effects on biological systems." Hope rose unexpectedly in Michael's chest. He had thought the eagle permanently removed from his life, condemned to existence as a classified research subject in some anonymous government facility. The possibility of seeing it again, of perhaps renewing that strange but profound connection, was more appealing than he wanted to admit. "When?" he asked simply. "A specialized containment and research facility is being established within the monitoring station on your property," Harper explained. "Construction will be completed within 2 weeks. After that, scheduled interaction sessions would begin under controlled conditions." Michael nodded, already decided though trying to maintain a poker face in the negotiation. "And the command unit, the one we disabled in the barn?" "Partially operational again, though with significant limitations," Harper replied with professional detachment. "The central processor was irreparably damaged, but peripheral systems have been stabilized for research purposes. It no longer presents a security risk, but remains invaluable for understanding the technology." As they reached the edge of the cornfield, the farmhouse lights visible in the distance, Michael made his decision. "I'll need the agreement in writing, with clear terms about property rights, research parameters, and my continued authority over farm operations." Harper nodded, having anticipated this response. "The paperwork is already prepared. Legal team has ensured your interests are properly protected. This partnership has too much potential value to risk alienating the primary subject through bureaucratic overreach." Michael smiled slightly at being referred to as the primary subject, but appreciated the acknowledgement of his essential role in whatever was developing here. "One more condition," he added, as they approached the farmhouse. "I want comprehensive information about where this technology actually came from. I saw fragments during the neural interface with the command unit, manufacturing techniques beyond current capabilities, algorithmic structures that shouldn't be possible. This isn't conventional military tech, is it?" Harper was silent for several steps, weighing how much to reveal. Finally, she stopped and turned to face him directly. "The origin question is uncomplicated. Analysis of recovered components confirms they weren't manufactured using any known terrestrial production method. Material composition includes alloys and composite structures that wouldn't be stable under normal Earth conditions." She chose her next words carefully. "The official position is that we're dealing with highly advanced technology of unknown origin, possibly representing a significant breakthrough by an unidentified research entity." "And the unofficial position?" Michael pressed, sensing the deliberate vagueness in her response. Harper looked up at the night sky, now displaying the first brilliant stars of evening. "Let's just say that certain theoretical divisions within the agency are exploring possibilities that extend beyond conventional terrestrial explanations." She returned her gaze to meet his directly. "What I can tell you with certainty is that these systems have been present in Earth's ecosystem for considerably longer than our official records acknowledge. The first documented recovery that we've since connected to this technology dates back to 1947, though the significance wasn't recognized at the time. The implication was clear enough without explicit confirmation." Michael followed her gaze toward the stars. contemplating the vastness above his modest farm with renewed perspective. If his grandfather had somehow sensed the special properties of this land decades ago, how many others throughout history might have experienced similar connections without the technological framework to understand what they were perceiving? "I'll sign your agreement," Michael said finally, returning his attention to the immediate reality of his farm and its newly revealed significance. "On one condition, all research conducted here must have potential agricultural applications. If I'm going to be part of this, I want it to eventually help other farmers, not just disappear into classified archives." Harper nodded with what appeared to be genuine approval. "That's already built into the research parameters. The potential for sustainable agriculture advancements is one of the primary justifications for this entire operation. Climate resilience has national security implications that extend far beyond your cornfield, Reynolds." As they reached the farmhouse porch, Sadie trotting ahead to claim her favorite spot near the door, the distant sound of an approaching vehicle drew their attention. A nondescript SUV with government plates was making its way down the long driveway, headlights illuminating the dust kicked up from the dry road. "Your research team?" Michael asked, surprised by the late visit. "Not scheduled," Harper replied, instantly alert as she checked her phone. "No communications about additional personnel deployments today." The vehicle continued its approach, eventually stopping near the house and cutting its lights. The driver's door opened, revealing a tall man in civilian clothes whose bearing immediately registered as military to Michael's experienced eye. As the man approached the porch, his features became visible in the porch light. Approximately 50 years old, with close-cropped silver hair and the physically fit build of someone who maintained rigorous training standards, regardless of age. "Agent Harper," the man acknowledged with a respectful nod before turning his attention to Michael. "Mr. Reynolds, I apologize for the unannounced visit. Colonel James Blackwood, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, Special Projects Division." Harper's posture had subtly shifted, communicating to Michael that this visitor outranked her in whatever complex hierarchy governed these classified operations. "Colonel," she greeted him with professional courtesy, "I wasn't aware DARPA had direct interest in this research site. Recent developments have elevated the priority classification," Blackwood replied, his tone conveying authority without arrogance. "The agricultural applications remain significant, but secondary findings from the recovered technology have opened new avenues of investigation that require expanded resources." He turned to Michael, extending his hand. "Mr. Reynolds, your contribution to this research has already proven invaluable. The neural interface you established with the recovered subject represents a breakthrough in our understanding of this technology." Michael shook the offered hand, noting the firm grip and direct eye contact that communicated honest respect rather than bureaucratic formality. "My understanding is that you're about to formalize a research partnership," Blackwood continued. "I'm here to offer an expansion of that agreement, one that acknowledges the true significance of what's happening on your property." Harper maintained her professional composure, but couldn't entirely hide her surprise at this development. "Colonel, the current agreement structure has already received departmental approval. Any substantive changes would require—" "The authority has been granted at the highest level," Blackwood interrupted smoothly, producing an official document with distinctive markings that caused Harper's eyebrows to rise slightly. "National Security Directive, Priority Classification Alpha 7. He returned his attention to Michael. "Mr. Reynolds, would you be willing to discuss the expanded parameters privately? I assure you that Agent Harper will be fully briefed afterward, but initial protocol requires direct communication with the primary subject." Michael glanced at Harper, who gave an almost imperceptible nod, despite her evident displeasure at being temporarily sidelined. Whatever hierarchy existed between these agencies, Blackwood clearly operated at a level that superseded FBI authority in this matter. "We can talk in my office," Michael offered, gesturing toward the farmhouse door. "It was my grandfather's. Study before that. Probably hasn't changed much since the 1970s, but it's private." As they entered the house, Michael led the colonel through the modest living room with its well-worn furniture and family photographs spanning generations of Reynolds farmers. The study was located at the back of the house, a small room lined with bookshelves containing agricultural references, weather almanacs, and the collected wisdom of decades of farming experience preserved in handwritten journals. Michael switched on the desk lamp, casting warm light across the vintage oak desk that had been his grandfather's pride and joy. Purchased during a rare, profitable year in the late 1960s and maintained with careful devotion through economic ups and downs. He gestured for Blackwood to take the visitor's chair while settling into the familiar leather of his grandfather's seat, worn smooth in places from years of use. "This is exactly the kind of authenticity we need for this program," Blackwood observed, glancing around the room with evident appreciation. Generational knowledge combined with openness to innovation, increasingly rare in today's specialized world. Michael leaned back in the chair, studying the colonel with the patient assessment that farmers developed through years of evaluating weather patterns, soil conditions, and market fluctuations. "Why don't we cut to the chase, Colonel? What exactly does DARPA want from my farm that isn't covered in the FBI's research proposal?" Blackwood smiled slightly, acknowledging the direct approach. DARPA's interest extends beyond the immediate applications Agent Harper outlined. While agricultural sustainability is certainly valuable, our focus is on the mechanism behind these effects. Specifically, the neural interface you experienced and the permanent enhancements to your perception that resulted from it. He leaned forward, his expression intensifying. "Mr. Reynolds, you've become something extraordinarily rare. A human being who has established direct neural communication with technology of non-terrestrial origin and retained functional enhancements from that experience. The implications extend far beyond growing better corn." Though Blackwood hadn't explicitly confirmed the extraterrestrial origin of the technology, his terminology made the conclusion unavoidable. Michael appreciated the relative candor after weeks of carefully worded explanations from Harper's team. "And what does DARPA plan to do with these implications?" Michael asked, maintaining his calm, measured tone despite the momentous nature of the conversation. "We believe your enhanced perception represents the first documented case of successful human-alien technology integration without invasive procedures or permanent implantation," Blackwood explained. "The fact that your consciousness adapted to and retained aspects of this connection suggests possibilities we've been theorizing about for decades, but never successfully implemented." He produced a small device from his pocket, similar to the one Harper had used to measure electromagnetic field variations, but with notably different configuration. When activated, it displayed a holographic projection of Michael's brain, with certain areas highlighted in pulsing colors. These neural pathways didn't exist in this configuration before your encounter with the eagle. They represent new connections that your brain developed to accommodate the interface, pathways that remained stable after the active connection ended. In essence, your neural architecture reconfigured itself to maintain capabilities that were initially facilitated by external technology. Michael studied the holographic image with fascination and mild trepidation. Seeing physical evidence of how profoundly the experience had changed him was both validating and slightly unsettling. "And DARPA wants to, what, replicate this?" In other people? He asked, immediately concerned about the ethical implications. Nothing so intrusive or experimental, Blackwood assured him, correctly reading his apprehension. What we're proposing is a comprehensive study of how your enhanced perception functions, with the goal of developing technology that might provide similar capabilities without requiring direct neural interface with alien systems. He deactivated the device, returning the study to its normal lighting. Put simply, you've become a template for potential human advancement, a naturally occurring example of capabilities we believe represent the next evolutionary step in human perception. The scope of what Blackwood was suggesting momentarily overwhelmed Michael. He had come to terms with the strange abilities that remained after his encounter with the eagle, gradually learning to use them in practical ways around his farm. But the idea that these changes represented something of evolutionary significance, that his experience might pioneer new developmental pathways for human consciousness, was far beyond what he had considered. What exactly would this study involve? He asked finally, needing concrete details rather than theoretical implications. 3 primary components, Blackwood replied. First, comprehensive mapping of your enhanced neural pathways and perception capabilities under various controlled conditions. Second, continued interaction with the recovered eagle to study the ongoing dynamic between your consciousness and the technology it carries. Third, and perhaps most significantly, exploration of how these enhanced capabilities interact with the unique properties of your land. He gestured toward the window, where the nighttime farm was visible as a landscape of shadows and distant starlight. The convergence is what makes this truly exceptional, Mr. Reynolds. Your personal neural enhancement, the technological systems in the eagles, and the unique electromagnetic properties of this specific location, together they create a harmonic resonance that exceeds the sum of its parts. Michael considered these elements, particularly the third component. You mentioned my land having unique properties. Agent Harper indicated something similar, but hasn't provided specific details. About what makes this location special? Blackwood nodded, seemingly prepared for this question, because until recently, the full significance wasn't clear to her team. Our analysis has revealed that your property sits atop a rare geological formation, a complex crystalline structure, approximately 200 feet below the surface, that creates unusual electromagnetic properties in the soil above it. He produced another device, this one projecting a 3-dimensional geological scan of the land beneath the Reynolds farm. The visualization revealed intricate crystalline formations extending deep into the earth, with unusual energy patterns flowing through specific channels within the structure. We believe this formation acts as a natural amplifier for certain types of electromagnetic frequencies, particularly those used by the eagle's communication systems. This isn't random chance, Mr. Reynolds. These systems were designed to utilize natural features like this formation, integrating with Earth's existing electromagnetic architecture rather than imposing artificial structures. The implication was both fascinating and slightly unnerving. You're saying my farm was chosen deliberately? That whoever designed these eagle systems specifically targeted this location? The evidence suggests the eagles are programmed to seek these natural amplification points for emergency procedures, Blackwood confirmed. Your injured eagle didn't randomly crash on your property. It was executing a pre-programmed protocol to reach this specific geological formation when its systems began failing. A thought occurred to Michael suddenly. My grandfather. He always claimed there was something special about this land, something that drew him to purchase it specifically, even though there were more fertile properties available at the time. Blackwood smiled with evident interest. Human intuition sometimes perceives phenomena that our technology can't yet measure. Throughout history, certain individuals have demonstrated unusual sensitivity to electromagnetic fields and geological anomalies. Your grandfather may have sensed the unique properties of this location on a subconscious level. He leaned forward, his expression intensifying. Which brings us to the most compelling aspect of our proposal. We believe your family may have a genetic predisposition to electromagnetic sensitivity, a trait that made your grandfather attracted to this land and that made you particularly receptive to the neural interface with the eagle's technology. The pieces suddenly aligned in Michael's mind. His grandfather's intuitive understanding of weather patterns before meteorological forecasting became reliable. His father's uncanny ability to locate underground water sources during drought years. His own inexplicable comfort returning to the farm after years away. What had seemed like family quirks or conventional farming wisdom passed through generations might actually represent an unusual inherited sensitivity to natural electromagnetic patterns. So, what happens next? Michael asked, processing this revelation while maintaining his practical farmer's approach to the situation. If you agree to the expanded research program, we would upgrade the monitoring station to a comprehensive research facility, still disguised as agricultural innovation to maintain security, but with significantly enhanced capabilities. You would participate in structured study sessions while continuing your normal farming operations. Blackwood's expression became more personal, less the military officer and more the human being. Mr. Reynolds, I want to be completely transparent about the significance of what we're proposing. This research has potential applications that extend beyond agriculture or even military technology. We may be looking at the next frontier of human perceptual evolution, capabilities that could fundamentally change how humans interact with their environment and with technology itself. Michael sat quietly for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of what was being proposed. 3 generations of Reynolds had worked this land, maintaining stewardship through economic hardship, climate challenges, and changing agricultural demands. His grandfather had chosen it for reasons he couldn't articulate, but felt with bone-deep certainty. His father had refused to abandon it, even when financial advisors insisted the property was no longer viable. And now, Michael himself had discovered its true significance, not just as farmland, but as a unique electromagnetic nexus point with properties that might advance human understanding in unprecedented ways. I'll need to think about it, he said finally, not willing to commit immediately despite his growing interest. This goes beyond what I anticipated when I signed Harper's agreement. Blackwood nodded with respect. Of course, this isn't a decision to be made hastily. Take 48 hours to consider the implications and review the detailed proposal. He placed a slim folder on the desk, old-fashioned paper rather than digital documentation. Everything is outlined here, including compensation, research parameters, and your rights within the program. Unlike conventional classified operations, this agreement includes unusually transparent information sharing. Given your unique position, withholding data would be counterproductive to the research goals. As they rose to conclude the meeting, Blackwood offered one final observation. Your grandfather named this property Harmony Fields, according to the original deed. An interesting choice, given what we now know about the electromagnetic resonance patterns beneath the soil. Perhaps his sensitivity to these patterns was more developed than anyone realized at the time. Michael walked the colonel back through the house, where Agent Harper waited with professional patience in the living room, Sadie sleeping contentedly at her feet. The contrast between the extraordinary conversation that had just concluded and the ordinary domestic scene created a surreal juxtaposition that seemed to encapsulate Michael's new reality. Feet planted firmly in the practical world of farming, while his mind engaged with concepts that stretched beyond conventional understanding. As Colonel Blackwood departed, after a brief formal conversation with Harper, Michael stepped onto the porch, looking out over the nighttime landscape of his farm. The fields stretched into darkness, corn rustling gently in the evening breeze. Above, stars punctuated the clear Nebraska sky with ancient light that had traveled unimaginable distances to reach this specific place, this particular moment. Whatever decision he made would honor the Reynolds legacy while acknowledging that sometimes stewardship meant embracing new understanding rather than clinging to old limitations. His grandfather had chosen this land based on intuition that science was only now beginning to explain. His father had preserved it through stubborn determination that ensured it would be available for this unprecedented moment. Now Michael stood at the convergence point of family history, advanced technology, and perhaps even cosmic significance. A simple farmer whose act of compassion toward an injured eagle had revealed connections that spanned generations, species, and possibly even worlds beyond his own. The future beckoned, not with certainty but with possibility, the most valuable crop any farmer could hope to cultivate. Up next, you've got two more extraordinary stories right on your screen. If this one captivated your imagination, you won't want to miss these carefully selected narratives. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any uploads from us.